Hi, and welcome to the We've Got a Problem podcast, where each week we explore inspiring stories of struggle, success, and solutions to prevalent problems, and how our guests have turned problems into opportunities. Today I'm joined by Sarah Marie Page. She's a part-time author in the young adult fantasy space, as well as a full-time trust and estates attorney who has managed to successfully blend two disparate lives into one. Her work has been featured in Y Magazine, The Advocate, The Crow's Quill, and Hippocampus Magazine, and her latest story, Rapacity, has just dropped June 30th. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Andrew.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I mean, look, being an attorney is more than a full-time job. There's a ton of reading and writing and stuff that goes along with that. But you got some harsh feedback from a mentor early on that in your legal career that led you to kind of torture yourself writing books too. Why? What happened there? Tell me more about this. What happened?
Exactly. So let me set the stage for you. Law school is really cutthroat, and they only give out so many A's, so many B's. It's graded on a curve. And so you're literally competing against your classmates. And how high you are in your law school rankings really determines the type of jobs that you can get once you graduated. And so I played the law school game really well, graduated top 20% of my class.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I ended up getting a dream job at a law firm that I had actually applied to work for as a summer intern. I'm a first-year associate, and things are going like pretty good, I think. So one afternoon, the attorney who brought me into the firm, the one that hired me, took me out to lunch. And he was like, I'm going to take you out to lunch and give you some mentoring because I don't think you're getting it from other attorneys at the firm. And so we went to the little boutique cafe across the street. And it's the same one that I went to lunch with when he brought me into the firm and was like, do you want a job with us?
Sure.
So we go to the same boutique cafe. It's called Romancing the Bean. And we sit at almost the same table that we sat at. And he's like, so I just wanted to let you know that Ben and Christina, so those are the two interns that they had and they're law student interns. So the two law students that they had at the firm at the time. He's like, I wanted to let you know that Ben and Christina are better than you and they're in law school. And you're not good at legal writing, and you're not good at legal research, and you're only good at filling out forms. I had built the firm system, a form bank of trust admin in my first year. And so that's where that form comment came from. But he's like, you're only good at filling out forms. And these words are burned into my memory.
Oh, yeah.
Verbatim.
This is like,
and so
you're a failure. Stop right there. They're going to eat you for lunch. Okay, great.
And so I'm sitting at and remember, this is my dream job. This is my dream law firm. And then I'm told the interns are better than you. And then he says, and they're going to push you out. He said the firm is offering them full-time positions when they graduate law school, and the partners are only going to give work to the good associates. And so they're going to only give work to them, and you're not going to end up with anything to do. And that was like the most gutting, and it was such a gutting moment. And I remember I had ordered like a sandwich and a salad, which was the same thing I ordered every single time at this restaurant because we went there all the time. And I just remember picking at it and not even hungry. And I think he came at it as like I want to help you out sort of thing. So like, I am giving you a warning and telling you the writing on the wall. But the way that it was delivered was very, very gutting to hear. This happened in 2019. I couldn't talk about it for a really long time because I felt like even sharing this experience somehow meant like I was a failure. And so like I was kind of like tight-lipped about it, and especially to the people that I work with. And so I didn't tell my boss, and I didn't tell like really anybody that I worked with. I just like sat on this and I would just start crying. I did start interviewing with other firms. And around the same time, I had been working on a witchy book. So a different manuscript in a different book. And a new idea for a new story started percolating. And I wanted it to be a story about a nobody who became a somebody, because I felt like such a nobody and I desperately wanted to be a somebody. And I wrote the first part of it in like a fever dream during these months. And I even go back and look at some of what I wrote now, and I was like, yeah, I was not okay.
Not a good time. Not a
No,
good time.
definitely not. But that is where House of Smoke came from. And now I can look back, and I think he was thinking he was trying to be helpful, but the way that he went about it was, again, gutting.
Right. Right. You're writing your books. You pour all that frustration into your novel. Now, what do you think is the way that, I mean, you've had to balance a lot of things between career and creativity. How have you been able to kind of balance your career and your creative journey? How has this, one is obviously fed into the other, but how have you balanced it yourself?
Yeah, so it's a push and a pull between those two ideas. A lot of people look at the law and they're like, the law is really regimented, and there's not a lot of leeway in the law. The law is actually a very creative endeavor and a very creative thing to do. I tell clients all the time that law is an art, it's not a science. And so the way that one person does things isn't necessarily the way that another person does things. And that doesn't mean that one's wrong or that one's right. The law also is a space of grace, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have the rules, but the rules can never account for every single situation that
It's all
you
about interpretation. It's all about how you look at it.
And so it's all about like, being an attorney and lawyering. And I honestly think it's interesting in writing. It's made me better so with writing fantasy, because that's what I do. You are building an entire world, right?
Yes.
And so you, by nature of writing fantasy, have to explain some things and like reason some things away, and to make them make sense, right? And
Right.
so the lawyer side of me, when I come in and my beta readers and my critique partners read the book and they're like, oh, and by the way, here's a plot hole, and here's a plot hole, and here's a plot hole, which is a natural part of the writing process, and getting feedback, then the lawyer side of me comes in and is like, okay, how can I reason this away in a way that makes sense, and do away with it? And so that's how the lawyer side has fed into the art side. And then the art side is definitely fed into the lawyer side, in that I think approaching situations and cases with a degree of creativity and flexibility, and being like, okay, there's not one right way to solve this problem. There are a number of ways. And my role as an attorney is really to act as a guide. And
Right.
so I'm there to help my clients and to explain to them, well, we could do this, but here are the downsides. Or we could do this, but here are the downsides. Which one of these two paths do you want to take?
Right.
So,
Well, and that's, I mean, hey, I have so many thoughts about all of these things that come up, and how to have better conversations with people, which I'm sure, again, talking about how feedback is delivered, how options are given, all those kinds of things that perhaps your first quote unquote mentor didn't do. But when you're talking with clients about what they want to do and what the stories are, it is a guide kind of solution finder. We're here to fix a problem that could come up. How do you want to do it? You are in control here. It's your trust, your estate, your whatever. But these are the things that might come up. How would you prefer to deal with these things? This way. Got it. Perfect. Let's do it. Let's do it together. Let's make it happen. But having those kinds of things and being able to explain in a way that people understand, and to hone and refine and focus on some of these things, just makes such a difference for the skills, because all of this is a repetitive skill. Writing is a repetitive skill that the more you do it, the better you get at it, the more efficient you can be with words, the more you can express a thought more succinctly, more poignantly. And being able to do that in the law, certainly, I can absolutely see how that ties together. I'm thinking, as you're talking, about the fact that with this kind of crushing blow so early on in your regular career, choosing writing books and fantasy stories is yet another area where imposter syndrome just runs rampant. If you were trying to avoid a sense of not feeling good enough, writing is not necessarily something to do with a fragile or shattered ego. How have you managed to deal with those feelings that I'm sure we all deal with time and time again, of not being good enough, my writing's not good enough, it's not there yet, how am I going to get there, all of that. How have you dealt with that?
Yeah, so you're definitely hit the nail on the head where writing is not for the faint of heart and thin-skinned. There is a lot of rejection that comes with writing. And I was telling my friends that it's ironic that, I wrote a book about not feeling like you were good enough and imposter syndrome and dealing with that. And now I'm querying it and getting rejected, and it's up for that. So, but I think to answer your question, my biggest piece of advice is to surround yourself with community and people who are in the same boat as you and who can lift you up. And, I support them and hype my friends and they support me. And the one thing that I love so much about writing is the community that I have found. My critique partner, Caitlin, has been with me since early 2020. We started it together in the pandemic and we're still going strong. And then I have a number of other friends who have joined along the way and they have made all of the difference.
Yeah. I mean, community is such an overlooked piece of advice, finding your community, finding people who are going through the same thing. I think in a way, and Jerry Seinfeld makes fun of it in his comedy routine about, we would all get rid of our friends if it wasn't more of a pain in the ass to go find new friends. Because the people we've chosen to spend our life with, it's like, they drive me nuts. But at the same time, finding people who actually understand and know what you're going through and who've been with you and know your journey and where you've been and all of those things is crucial to keeping your sanity. And it's so often, we all have friends who you complain about something, I don't know, whatever, in your business, in your writing and whatever, and they have no lens through which to understand that. And so they try and apply some, at least it's not this, or at least you're this, or whatever. And, but be happy about this. And, I'd love to be where you are and all this. You go, yes, but if I talk to another writer, they go, oh no, I totally get it. That's awful. I've been there so many times before when you're struggling with trying to figure out what the character's doing. One of the things that I did the other day was X, and, you just got to step away from it, or you got to do this, or you got to do that. And I'm there for you. I see you. I hear you. I understand. And even not offering solutions, but just to go, oh man, we've all been through that. And you go, oh, well, at least this is normal. At least this is the way it goes. YouTubers talk about this, that oftentimes a lot of their friends, because being a YouTuber or even a podcaster, let's say, is one of those jobs that you oftentimes do in a room semi-alone. Now, I'm talking to you, that's great, but so often a lot of the work is sitting here, struggling with something, making a video, doing the podcast, whatever, and there is no actual interaction with people beyond what fans might write in their comments, and the YouTuber comments can be just witheringly incisive and horrible and all those things and hateful. And you kind of have to avoid that. So finding other people who've been through it who go, oh yeah, I'm struggling with this, struggling with that, and understand again what you're going through is absolutely vital to the process. So you've taken this path, you've been going down it for a couple of years now. Why don't more people focus on also pursuing that other side of themselves? What do you think is stopping people from doing that?
Yeah, I think it's easy to let life get in the way of that, and pursuing that. And it's easy to say, I'll start tomorrow. I think another thing is feeling like you are not good enough to start. And, it's I have been wanting to pick up watercolor painting for the longest time, and I bought all the supplies, and I moved with them just recently. I was packing them up and I'm like, oh yes, this is when I wanted to get into watercolor painting. But it's hard to start at square one and to realize, I am not good. And I realize that I am not good. There's that square diagram where it's competence and don't know you're incompetent and you don't know what you're doing. And then you conscious incompetence, and they always put that up at the beginning of classes. But, it's sitting in that, like, I know I'm incompetent and I'm bad and I'm going to push through it and do it anyways. I looked back at, the first stuff that I wrote when I started writing again, and it's bad. Like, it's not good. And like now I know. I always tell people writing is kind of like writing your first book is like building a house when you don't have any blueprints. And you've seen a house and you know how a house is built, or you know what a house looks like, but you don't know exactly how to build one. And so it's a lot of trial and error. You're hammering boards together and you're like, this is not right. And so you pull out the nails and you end up with a bunch of boards that are cut in weird ways and nails that are, that have been put in and pulled out. And so they're at weird angles now. And some people can take that and they can build a pretty good house without knowing what they're doing. I was not one of those people. Right. My first book was that witchy one that is sitting in a trunk. Well, in the writing world, they call it a trunk manuscript, but it's sitting on my desktop. And sometimes I go rifle through its bones to pull out like parts that I like. But
right.
It's having the guts to start, even when you realize like I am not good and it's not going to be good,
That is such a big piece of advice for anything, whatever it is, whatever you're starting when you're not good at it, when you're new at something, just having the guts to be bad, to walk in and go, I might suck at this. This is going to be horrible, but I have to get through that. I have to do it first because everybody starts from square one. That's, I think, the fallacy that people buy into so often is the person you see out there who's killing it started out that way, right? Oh, they must have just been brilliant. It's just, and there's no focus on the hard work that went into getting there. The whole process of whatever, Thomas Edison's 1,000 failed attempts to make a light bulb. They just see the finished product and go, oh, it must have come out that way, fully formed. And you've got to give yourself grace to be bad, to go. I got to write the bad one so I can get to the good one. I gotta go through there to be there. So, I mean, is there kind of a nugget of wisdom that you would tell somebody who is trying to start off on this similar path? What do you wish that you'd known? What do you know now that you wish you'd known when you were starting out?
Just start and let everything come out. Just get started on that path. Look for mentors and for people who will build you up, who are a little bit farther ahead than you are. Also look for community. And I can't stress out enough how important my writing friends and my writing community has been to me in both dealing with the rejections and also my attorney community too. Mm-hmm. Amazing. Like my husband, after I got that feedback, he was like, no, Sarah, you're new. You're a new attorney. And so the law teaches you a lot about like the theoretical, or law school teaches you a lot about the theoretical components of the law, but it doesn't teach you really how to practice law.
Right.
And so it's kind of like jumping into the deep end of the pool and then like trying to swim a little bit. You know that a tort for negligence, there has to be duty, breach, causation, and harm. But what does that look like practically?
Right. Right. What does that actually mean? Yes. Well, I always think, I go back to my cousin Vinny, which is my entire experience with the law. But he goes, no, they don't teach you procedure in law school. They just teach you torts and contracts and all this stuff. The firm that hires you, they teach you procedure. Now, of course, he's wrong, but that was his whole thing. He was like, well, you don't get everything you need from law school. You get it. You gotta actually get there and start doing it. The theory is what you learn in any kind of school, but the practice, how it actually works, what it actually looks like on a day-to-day basis. What does this mean? What does it mean when you've got somebody sitting in front of you crying because they have no idea what the financial picture looked like for their entire family because they abdicated responsibility to their husband or wife or whatever and find out after they pass away that they have no idea where anything is, and they don't know how any of this works or what's going on. How do you talk to that person? How do you protect somebody from being in that that situation? Those are the kind of things, the big real world questions that we all get into, I'm sure. So I do want to talk about the law for just a minute, because that is a big component of your life. And you've guest hosted the podcast, Is That Even Legal, a few times, and appeared as a guest on the show a couple of times as well. What surprised you the most in kind of your early experience when you learned something that was just shocking, that's the way it was? What was just shocking to learn when you were getting into that?
Okay, so this one is going way back to the law school days.
Okay.
But I was shocked when I learned about adverse possession. So
Okay.
It's this concept in the law that if you squat on a property long enough, it can become yours. And there are other like components that have to be met. But yeah, that was wild to learn. And
so, no, please go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I did an episode with Bob on that was the first time I ever guest hosted. And I had been a guest on the podcast, and I came to Paul and I was like, Paul, this is like wild that you can like squat on someone's property. Like I can like, pitch a tent on their property. And if I sit there long enough, then I can take over that property. And if some other, like, it's like, 25 years and you can't have permission to be there. So as soon as someone says you can be there, then your claim has been ruined. So there are other things that you have to.
Right. Well, Sarah, give us a whole masterclass. This is a totally separate episode. Not that it's possible, but how to make it happen. What do I have to do to get somebody else's? No, I mean, that's certainly one of those things. And I have heard of the concept of adverse possession before. But when I heard about it, it was certainly mind-blowing. And of course, like you say, it's 25 years and there's lots of other things that go along with it and steps that have to happen. But that it's even possible that somebody could erase your ownership claim by being there without permission is kind of mind-blowing. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. The law is kind of funny. So you do trust and estates. Why do people avoid doing estate planning? He says, loaded question, loaded question, loaded question.
Well, it's a number of reasons. The first one is fear of, there's procrastination. That's the first one. It seems so far in the future and I'll get around to it. It's kind of like going to the dentist. Like, and I realize that in some ways I'm kind of like the dentist. Like no one's like, yes, I am so hyped to do my estate planning. Now, a lot of my clients feel really good when they leave and they feel like they have a burden lifted off of their shoulders, but it's something that I would rather, going to the dentist are things that I would rather do on a Thursday afternoon than do the dentist. And I realize in some ways I'm kind of like that. So there's procrastination. I think there's also fear of death. And I've seen that a couple of times where there are people who are facing their own death, usually due to terminal illness, and they know it's coming. And so that they'll put off doing their estate planning, even in that case, because doing their estate planning means confronting their own death. Right. I will say, I love this area of law. And the reason I picked it, I picked it because I had good work-life balance. And that's why that's why I moved my way into it. But something that a lot of people don't realize about trust and estates law is that there's a lot of drama that goes into it. I like to talk about one of the first things I did as a baby associate was track down a $30,000 dog. He's a German Shepherd and he only took commands in German, but this guy, he lived a much bigger life than he was a bankruptcy, or he's some sort of attorney, maybe criminal bankruptcy. I don't remember. But he was like, I'm going to live the biggest, best life that I can. And so he was actually secretly broke. And this came out as we were working on his estate. But he bought like crazy,
right.
And he had all this original art. And one of the things was a $30,000 dog. He also had an affinity for women whose names started with the letter J, and dated several of them. And so when he died, all of the women raided his apartment, and one of them, the dog, ended up going missing. And we're like, okay, we got to go find this $30,000 dog. And so that's a perfect case for a brand new first year associate, was go track down what happened to this dog. So I'm calling Jackie who says that Jamie has it, and Jamie says that Joni has it, and Joni says that Jerry has it. And it's like going through this. And then I sit down with the partner who's in charge of this case. And I'm like, okay, so Jackie said that Jerry has a dog, and Jerry said that Jamie has it. He's like, what? And I'm like, I'll draw it out for you. And where all this stuff went. So that one was a wild case. You see some really sad stuff too, doing it. And you sometimes have to deliver sad news. Yeah. I usually try and send flowers when I deliver bad news after the consult because I have a bleeding heart. Yeah. And, I can't make it better, but I can. Flowers at least make it a little bit not happy. Like I can't make it better, but flowers
soften the blow just a little bit. Yes, absolutely. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for joining. We were coming kind of to the end of this time here, so I wanted to ask a couple of questions I try and ask everybody, and these can be very broad or specific to your individual areas of expertise. You can talk to me about writing or the law or anything in the world, doesn't matter. But what do you feel like the biggest fallacy is that everybody buys into? What's horribly overrated?
On the law side, it's people think that attorneys are going to read the will. And everybody always expects that when someone dies, there's going to be a formal reading of the will where everybody's going to gather in a living room that's paneled from the 1970s, and we're going to come in suits, and we're going to be like, here is the will, and it has not been opened, and nobody knows what it says, and now let me read it to you. That's not how it actually works. Usually we just mail a copy of the will, but when people want to, when my clients feel like they want to fling mud at somebody, or when a grumpy heir feels like they want to fling mud at somebody, they always bring that up. They're like, and they haven't even read the will. I'm like, okay, that's not something that actually happens. So that's the legal side. Yeah. And on the writing side, I think the biggest fallacy is, gosh, I'm blanking. Maybe we just do the legal side.
Easy. So on the other side of it, what is the most underrated concept you think people overlook? What are people missing? What do we need more of?
I think community. With COVID, a lot of people fell out of touch with each other. I fell out of touch with some of my friends who were really close friends before COVID and just kind of drifted away from each other. But honestly, I know we talked about community, but I can't hype my friends and stress. I will scream their praises from the rooftops until the day I die. They're a big part of my life and a big influence on who I am, and I am so grateful for them.
I think that's absolutely correct. More community for everybody. And now more than ever do we need it. Sarah, thank you so much for joining me. Folks, if you want to know more about Sarah, check out her Instagram at Sarah Page Stories. Check out her website, sarahpagestories.com, as well as serpentgreen.com, where you can learn about her latest story, Rapacity, out June 30th. Links to everything are in the show notes as always. And until next time, I'm Andrew Wallace, and we don't have a problem. We've got an opportunity.